Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
This is going to be fun. We are starting a new series this evening, Setting a Trap for God. And it is based on the book by that title, by Rocco Errico. And my talk this evening is going to be taking a little bit of an understanding of kind of what he says prayer is in the Aramaic, and kind of broadens our own view of prayer, and certainly mirrors what we believe in Unity, of course, but it also just kind of opens us up, I think, from our concerns around how we pray. And the other part this evening will be to introduce in the Lord's Prayer that the book is based on and treats throughout, that will be in our series. And so we're also going to be launching kind of another version of looking at the Aramaic in the Lord's Prayer. And that's going to mirror what's happening on Sundays, starting this Sunday with Reverend Michael's Touchstone series, and what we'll be doing with that. So just wanted to kind of orient you as to what's happening here and what we're thinking about. And so Rocco Errico's book, Setting a Trap for God, first I want to handle his title because I love the title. He says the Aramaic word for prayer says in a way to trap, or to set a trap for God. But he explains it this way, even though I love the idea of stalking God and setting a trap. Still, what he says is that it's like our minds are set to trap the thoughts of God. I love that idea, right? And so, yes, that is precisely the feeling, I think, that we often have, that we're here in this third dimension, in these three-dimensional plane of being and experience, and want to understand something more, something greater, and we want to bring it down into us. And so setting a trap for God is a way of reaching outside of our own understanding and our own awareness to something greater than ourselves. Whatever we describe that as being, however it is we get there, that can be the way in which we pray. That's a prayer. He talks about, Rocco Errico talks about focusing on tuning into the thoughts of God. The purpose of prayer, though, really is to prepare the mind, he says, to become a blank tape, ready to receive all the good that we may need in our lives. In other words, to be impressed, to be brought into an awareness, to be given vision, to be given thoughts or ideas that are not of our own. And I think in our lives, I'm sure in yours, there have been times when you have been aware that you have received an idea or a thought bigger than one you've held before, or a reframe, or a sideways in through the side door, a sudden awareness that you hadn't had before. That's a moment of, I would consider that to be divine intervention. It is very often the fruit of prayer, whether it's in the activity of prayer that you receive that. A lot of times it is, sometimes it isn't. But it is, in fact, the fruit of prayer. In other words, the willingness to open one's mind to something greater. And we do that in our unguarded moments. How many of you have gotten something, a new insight when you're brushing your teeth? Or in the shower, or driving down the road, and suddenly, boom, you know exactly how to fix that problem. Suddenly it just comes in, and you just know. And Of course, we take credit for that, because there was nobody in the car with me, so I assume that was me. But in fact, it is the fruit of prayer. It is actually bearing fruit. Let's see. He also, Rocco Errico says, God counsels not with words, but by spirit. It's an intangible thing, as opposed to how we influence others. In other words, we make activity in the world, and we impact and influence people with our words, with our being, with our presence, with all the ways in which we interact. But God, without a body, except one could argue ours, but setting that aside, for me to be in an experience of God, it really has to be an intangible, palpable sense of something deeper inside of me. And in this experience, that's how I'm connected, and that's what I see. In the Aramaic, the name for God is Ithea, which really means self-existent, self-cohesive and sustaining. In other words, it is oneness itself. It is existence or beingness itself. God does not derive its life from something else, from anywhere or through anything else. Everything we call a thing, everything that we know of, derives its beingness from this, from Ithea, is the way, the Middle Eastern understanding, or the word Ithea, which means all in all, everything that is. And out of that fabric of everythingness, things come. We come. We are. We proceed from that. The spiritually devout Easterner would say, Allah, God, is my very breath, my very heartbeat, my life. I love that. My very breath, my heartbeat, my life. If you've read Rumi or Hafiz or any of the Sufi poets in particular, that interconnection with the divine, the ecstatic way in which the poetry that arises out of that spiritual awareness and depth and hunger at times is really expressive of that same idea that my heartbeat is the connection that I have with the divine. It is actually that is within me and a part of my experience. Spiritual intelligence governs our bodies and our living cells that make health and life. And so, knowing that we are immersed in that spiritual awareness, presence, goodness, God in God, God throughout all, that just meditating on that, just being aware that in the inexplicable, in the wonder of who you are, of what you are, of your body and its place in this experience right here, right now, just as we did a little of that in the meditation, where I took you on a cosmic adventure, but wherever it was that you went, whatever you heard, whatever you did with it, whatever, it was yours, and yet it wasn't, you didn't go anywhere physically, I imagine. You instead journeyed in the interior because you are not limited to where your body is seated, and neither am I. And this is the beauty of having a connection with something greater than ourselves that is everywhere present and yet nowhere. Everywhere. So what about this idea of prayer, right? Well, here's an interesting thing. In Matthew chapter 6, in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus taught us how not to pray. He did. In Matthew 6, verses 7 through 8, he says, "And when you pray, do not keep babbling like pagans. They think they'll be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him." So fascinating. So don't do the prayers that I was taught to pray, and don't use words because that's all I know. But what else am I supposed to do? What is prayer, and how do I commune with something invisible? Why, I commune invisibly, of course. And therein lies true prayer, in the awareness of tuning in and pulling our attention from outer to inner. And in doing that, we now have learned something different about prayer. Prayer changes us, not God. So there's nothing to beg God for, although in times of stress and fear and trouble, we often do that. We forget for a minute, please God, don't let that happen. Please God, protect my loved one. Please God, don't let that test be positive. Right? Our prayers are just a venting, really, of our deepest fears, and also with awareness and with practice, becomes actually a stepping stone to remembering what the truth is and preparing ourselves for whatever comes our way, for whatever results come, whatever it is that we are to experience in this lifetime, remembering that, first of all, when we were afraid, we reached out to something greater than ourselves, and that something is still here with us, and that we are not alone, and we're not walking alone, and that whatever it is, together, we are more than whatever it is. So, if prayer changes us and not God, we really don't have to remind God of our presence or of the things we want or don't want. And yet we do it anyway, and we ask for those things, and they come in their good time. So what is prayer exactly, if it's not begging and if it's not a lot of words? Rocco Errico says, what prayer accomplishes is this: it helps us to understand ourselves. It attunes us to spiritual forces around and in us, and it nourishes our spirits. Prayer brings a clearer atmosphere into our minds so that we may better comprehend our world and other human beings. Prayer brings a clearer atmosphere into our minds so that we may better comprehend our world and others. And doesn't it? It does do that, doesn't it? When we lift up, when we open up, when we reach out, when we stop thinking our own tortured, circular, cyclical thoughts, when we are willing to set a trap for a bigger idea or to another thought or a reframed picture of what it really is, that we capture a sense, another idea, and the atmosphere of our minds, I love that idea, changes. And that prayer, that activity of prayer, changes us. In setting a trap for God, when Rocco Errico talks about the Lord's Prayer, which we're moving into now, this idea of the setting the trap and of capturing something bigger, he he synthesizes and elucidates more of the ways in which Jesus taught, using the Aramaic language, being Middle Eastern himself, as we well know, and understanding the culture in which Jesus lived and the language he used to speak and inevitably to teach the disciples this prayer, begins with Abba. Abba. We translate it, or have translated, as our Father. It does mean Father, but Abba actually has a different kind of sensitivity. It means more like Daddy, or Papa, or Dada. An infant's voice, an infant's speech, a child's language for father. In Jewish prayer, customarily, they would use prayer like Father Abraham and Father Isaac. They would go back and recount their ancestors and call them into prayer. We did that in the Catholic Church when I grew up. We called on the saints. We called on our patron saints, those we were named for. So good Catholics, when I grew up, were named for a different saint, so we always had a patron saint looking out for us. It was a way our parents could kind of ensure that we would have someone pulling for us in the invisible plane. We could call on the Blessed Mother. We could call on Jesus, of course. But it was always something to sort of mediate our prayer. We didn't assume that we could go straight to God, that there was maybe too much distance, or maybe too great, and maybe not enough worthiness, and maybe we had fallen short, and we really needed someone who would understand falling short. So saints and those who'd had bodies were a lot closer, it seemed to us. But Jesus teaches in his simple prayer that there's no intermediary necessary. We go straight to Abba. We go straight to Daddy. We go straight to God. Father. But actually, even Abba is not exactly father in that sense. It actually is parent. It is really talking about the one who is looking out for us, the one to whom we belong, the one who is our protector and our benefactor and our teacher and our nurturer. It is actually parent in our lives. Jesus teaches that there's no intermediary necessary, so we have to find our own relationship with God. I love what Emmett Fox says about the Our Father part of the prayer. Emmett Fox says, just by starting off with Our Father or Abba, parent, our parent, my one who's looking out for me, is the sum of a complete and defined theology. He says it defines our relationship with God, this intimate connection, this belonging, this I am of thou. I, thou, but I am of thou. I am connected. I wouldn't be here without you. You are my first. I come from you into this experience, right? This is that intimate relationship and the depth of that. It also expresses intimately and instantly our relationship with others. If this is my Father, and all is within me, then everyone I see who comes from the same parent, from the same source, the same beginning, comes into being are my brothers and sisters. One theology, in one word, Abba. Father is also seen as the source or the cause, first cause, protector, security, bounty, structure, manifestation, wisdom. It's like every, the how and the why and the what, all of it bound together as one thing. If we see the source of being, whatever word we want to give to it, first cause, this is the role of the one from which all good things come. And so while we have roles in our own minds that are father roles and mother roles, the truth is they're not really, we've divided them culturally as gender, but they're really not fulfilled strictly by gender, are they? They're not. Because we have people in our lives of both genders who provide nurture and love and peace and security and protection and outrage on our behalf and the bounty, bring the bounty into our experience and heal us when we need it. They're simply people who care and love us. And so the beauty of this is that to see that love comes from an infinite source, we do not have to parse words or divide into male and female. What we know is that as one heart that loves, all benefits and beauty can come through. Therefore, our divine inheritance, our heritage, are the powers that we recognize as God. All of the things that we ask God for are actually within ourselves. And what we may do better is ask for their activation in us. Ask for our awareness of them. Ask for an openness to allow this power to be revealed in me, that I need to face this situation. That's an able prayer. God as parent, Emmett Fox talks about in his Sermon on the Mount. He says, if you would meditate upon this fact until you had some degree of understanding of what it really means, most of your difficulties and physical ailments would disappear, for they are rooted and grounded in fear. God as parent, God as present, God as my heartbeat, God as my breath, God everywhere present, in and through all. God is power in me and being individualized as I need it in whatever it is I face. My heritage as a child of this God. So my Father, your Father, our Father, one way to think of it. My parent, your parent, our parent, together. A full theology. So what understanding did Jesus have? He saw God as a loving parent, as the source of everything. That God is for us, not against us, not checking us out or judging us. We are God's children. And as his children, we receive every good thing. He says it this way in Matthew 7. Which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? Like no duh, right? I love this. I know people always go, wait a minute, did Jesus just call me evil? Did Jesus do that? He did. But here's what I would say about that. I personally think Jesus is hilarious, and I think he is always making jokes, and we just, didn't realize it. I think the whole thing is that he was just saying, yes, you're evil. Yes, you who are evil, you can give good things to your kids, right? Yes, how much more can God the good give you every good thing? That's what he said. Take it from me. That's what he said. So I'm going to close with the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic, translated by Rocco Errico. So wrap your head around this. Rocco Errico took the Aramaic words, translated it into English, and this is his version. You'll hear others. This is his. We'll be covering this in the coming weeks. Our Father who is everywhere, let your name be set apart. Come your kingdom, your counsel. Let your desire be as in the universe, also on the earth. Provide us our needful bread from day to day, and free us from our offenses, as also we have freed our offenders. And do not let us enter into temptation, but separate us from error. For belongs to you the kingdom, the power, and the song and praise, from all ages, throughout all ages, sealed in trust, truth, and faithfulness. And so it is.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.